Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode number 19 in the Craft Fair booth review series where I take a look at a real craft fair booth submitted by one of my subscribers, and I'll break it down into 10 segments. Along the way, I'll point out things that the vendor is doing well and should continue to do, and then also identify some areas where there's room for improvement. Keep your craft fair booth in mind as we go along so that you can apply these tips to make your booth even better. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right in. Okay, and for today's episode, we're going to be reviewing Eliana's booth, and her business name is Eira Cosmetics, and she is based all the way up in Alaska. All right, so a state that I didn't think I would get to this early, but pretty cool to check it off. So Eliana, her business, she sells her own line of cosmetics. So she actually has a degree in cosmetic chemistry, and like I said, she has her own line of cosmetics that she sells. So we're going to be taking a look at her booth today. It is an outdoor 10 by 10 booth, and it's pretty well put together, so there's a couple of questions that she asked me in an email to address during the review, and we're going to get into that along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's our first look at the booth. Like I said, this is an outdoor 10 by 10 spot. And right off the bat, you notice pretty good branding, right? So heavy use of green throughout the booth. That is obviously the theme that she's gone with. And the first thing that we're going to dive into for this review is displays. So let's work our way from left to right and start diving in here. And the first thing that we see is a 6-foot table at the front of the booth. So it's positioned in front, okay? And typically when you see a table that is positioned in the front of a booth and it's a walk-in situation, the table is usually deep, so it's long-wise instead of sideways. Okay, so we'll kind of get into that later when we talk about accessibility. But this first display that we see here is really nice. It looks very clean and just has a good overall look to it. It has that mint green that she's established, and there's 3 levels. So she's establishing really good verticality at the booth as well. So I like that. And over on the right side of the table, let's see here. Okay, she's got a nice wooden riser, and this is a 4-level riser. And the wood is nice just to kind of break up a little bit of the green, just to offer a little bit of something else to look at, So I do like the choice of having a couple of just bare wooden displays at the booth. And we'll keep going down here. Now here we have, I don't know if you'd consider this like a cart or, like a tray situation, but it's got different levels to it. And on 2 of the levels, she's using it for signage. And then on the upper level, she has samples. Okay, so the samples are for these products right here. So this is always a good sign to see that. I can't remember actually looking back on the booth reviews. I don't think we've had too many booths that have offered samples. So it's nice to actually just kind of start talking about this situation because it is pretty common, but we just really haven't had it in the booth reviews yet. But whenever you have samples, it's nice to have the actual products themselves right next to it, okay? And I know this is kind of common sense. This is one of those things where it's like generally it goes without saying, but it's better to say it just in case if, there's information slipping through the cracks, you want everybody to stay in the know. So, like I said, you want to have your samples right next to what's actually being sold, okay? And then we'll look at the right side of the booth. Now, it's getting cut off in the picture, and we don't have a good picture of it. We have 3 pictures in total for this review. So there's one that kind of focuses on that left side of the booth that we looked at, and then there's another one that focuses on the banner, okay? But for the right side of the booth, she has kind of like a poster, like a framed poster, and this is kind of like the personal touch. All right, so it's saying a little bit about the business name. It's kind of like a welcome, and it also has her social media info on there as well. So this is really nice. I know that we would probably touch on this in marketing, but Like I said, it's getting cut off in the picture, so might as well just cover it now. Okay, then let's start to kind of tackle the right side of the booth over here. So here she has kind of like a stool, and then on the inside of this box, she has a mailing list sign up sheet. So it's always a good idea to have an email sign up sheet at your booth, and just to collect those email addresses, because that is communication that you can rely on as opposed to getting shut down and squeezed by the social media algorithms. Okay, then she has the big bottle of hand sanitizer. With a booth like this, that is a good idea because a lot of these things are being handled. People want to smell the items before they buy them, so a lot of these products are getting handled quite a bit. So always a good idea to keep a bottle of this stuff at your booth, just to, I mean, for one thing, set people's mind at ease that you're at least being conscious about it, and then to also, of course, just give them the option to use it themselves. Okay, and then as we move further back, I'll cover this TV tray first. So there's kind of like a TV tray painted green. On top of it, there's a little bit of a riser. And then she has a couple of, I think they're lip balms. All right, so that's on this little stand. And then we go back to the last table. I believe this is another 6-footer. And she has kind of like a sister version of her two displays on the other table. Okay, so looks like the same exact wooden riser. It's got 4 levels. And then this display here, it has three levels, and it looks, yeah, it's exactly the same as the one in front. So I like this. I like when vendors pair up their displays, particularly when they have more than one type and it's paired with kind of like a sister display, right? So this is a really, really good way to carry a theme through a booth. And a lot of times when we're talking about the theme, we're focusing on the products, but it's also about the displays and the presentation as well. So this is a really, really nice job of just making sure that everything is tied into one another. Okay, so let's do a little quick review of the displays. There is, and again, I'm going to talk about this in the accessibility portion of the booth, but there are some concerns with accessibility and just like the flow of traffic and making sure that foot traffic doesn't get bottlenecked in the booth, okay? So this TV tray, I feel like it's a bit unnecessary. So it's kind of squeezing off this entrance and exit a little bit. And really the only thing that it's doing is propping up this one smaller riser, okay, which I think you could probably get it onto this table if you had it the long way, okay? But yeah, I mean, basically when you put something out at your booth, take a look at it and then ask yourself, is this doing more harm or is this doing like more good for the booth overall? And you got to like weigh in all the aspects. So it might look nice, it might look cute, but then are you sacrificing people's mobility and ease of getting in and out of the booth and things like that? So you got to kind of weigh all those pros and cons and decide if it's overall good or overall bad. Okay, so I think the things that we're going to be focusing on the most during this review is a combination of displays and accessibility. So let's go ahead and move on now to pricing. And we'll take a closer look here, start diving in. And when we take a look at this first display, you'll notice that a couple of the pricing signs are blocked. So this, I think, is a little bit of an area of improvement at the booth. I notice on the bottom one that you have it on a little bit of an easel, and there's no products that are set in front of it. Okay, so if we look over here, you have a couple of the jars that are set in front of the pricing sign, and that is doing a little bit of a disservice to the work that you put into the sign. Over here, there's nothing in front of the sign, but it looks like that easel just isn't quite high enough. So maybe the easels aren't like the best option to get these pricing signs pointed outwards, and I do like that they are pointed outwards, okay, instead of just laid down or or on the table kind of facing straight up. But maybe you could even just put like Velcro on the back of it and then put like a strip of Velcro here and have them stuck right to the front so you just can't miss it at all. That might be, an easy way to navigate a little bit of those sighting issues. Over here, the pricing sign, it is pretty hard to read because it has like this white scribbly thing going on, and then it says body something, maybe body lotion. But just with the nature of the two different colors kind of intersecting on this sign, you can't read it at all. So I would just address that and just simplify it. Sometimes simple and cleaner is better, and it is tempting. It's definitely tempting to want to spruce the booth up a little bit and make it look as good as can be. But sometimes there's spots where it's okay to pump the brakes and just keep it simple, and your signage is probably one of them. Over here, it looks like you drew like, some sun and some clouds. It basically has eaten up so much of the real estate that the important part of the sign, the name of the product and then the price, has gotten squeezed down really far. So these are a couple examples of things that you might just be better off going simple on. Okay. I would incorporate the theme if you want to, so maybe get like this pen right here. This pen is like a really, really nice green. Maybe just stick to this throughout the entire portion of all of your signage instead of having like, different color schemes for every single sign. One thing that you could do is have two colors. So a lot of people will do one color for the name of the product, and then green is great for how much it costs, of course, just correlating with money and green, and people just understand that connection visually a lot quicker. All right, so let's keep on going over here. We're looking at pricing, and I'll cover this one while we're on pricing. And I like that you have the we accept sign for the payment methods for people, and it has Square and then all the major cards. So this is great. I like to see this, and it's nice that it's out front too. It's not hard to find it, and it's right there for people. You also have the PayPal and Venmo sign right above it, so you're covering both of the, or all, I should say, all of the payment methods right up front. So that's good. Okay, and then back here, I do like the signage a little bit better back here because even from this distance, and I've zoomed in this picture so much that it's starting to get a little bit grainy. Even here, you can tell that these items are $6 and $10. And let me just show you how far we're zoomed in here. So that's the that's the picture. So this is probably from like 5 or 10 feet outside of the booth, and we can tell that it's $6 and $10. So this is a really good example of a nice sign that's simplified, and you're able to see everything crystal clear. And then over here, we kind of have the same deal. So there's water up here, $8. Fantastic. And then on this sign, looks like it says face bar, and there's a medium and a large. And the sign is just getting blocked, but you can very clearly see it if you were standing in front of this particular spot of the booth. And then we have three last and final signs. So here is one, and then there's two more down here. And you've done a little bit of decorating on these, but I think these are a little bit cleaner than, say, for example, like this one, right? Because this one, you have all those intersecting lines and you just can't make it out. Whereas here, you've left a nice open spot in the middle of the sign to put the name of the item and then the price. So I'd say that these are a little bit better. Like, so if you're still tempted to do some designs on your pricing signage, I would stick to something that's more like this, where there's still really good legibility. Okay, so that covers pricing. Obviously, you are doing grouped pricing instead of individual pricing. Or I shouldn't say, you're not doing individual pricing, because there could be like a small tag or small sticker on each of these items. But from what I can see, it looks like you're going with the group pricing, and you're doing it really well. I mean, everything is grouped together in a very clean and defined manner. So it's easy for the shopper to look and be like, oh, okay, well, the lip balms are this, or the lotion is that. It's all together, and it's very, very obvious what everything costs at the booth. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the rest of signage. So we did cover this large sign on the right-hand side of the booth right there. So we covered this one before. And again, this was a nice, looks like mostly a marketing sign with the business name and a little bit of an introduction and then the social media handles. So then down here, we have a blue sign that says, look for the label. Be sure you're buying genuine Alaska products by the bear. This is pretty cool. I like this because it further emphasizes, shop local, shop handmade, shop small, and it basically just pushes that mantra and that goal for people to recognize that this is a locally handmade product and booth. Okay, so that was about it for the extra signage. I'd say that your signage is pretty good. I think you have basically all the major elements covered. And we're going to go ahead and dive into marketing so that we can continue talking about the rest of the signs at the booth. Okay, so here we go. We have the big marketing banner at the back of the booth. I like the placement of it. I like it at the back of the booth because with the shape and size of this banner, there's really no other ideal option. Okay, so it's not like it could be on the front of this canopy because it would just be, there's not enough room this way, like to have it basically attached to the canopy. So it would just be hanging down in people's way, and that would obviously not be ideal. So the placement of it I do like, and we'll go further in on it. I think this is a pretty good banner. I really enjoy it. So first of all, we have the business name front and center with the snowflake logo, okay? So Eira Cosmetics made in Alaska, so this is very nice. A couple of forms of contact information over here, and then finally the social media handles on the bottom. Good use of the black strip on this because it makes this bottom part really, really stand out. So I like the contrast of the banner. I like the look of it. I like the elements that you included on it. So I would say job well done. It's very, very legible, easy to read. And I especially, again, like the point of putting cosmetics made in Alaska. Okay, so it's always good to hammer home that local flavor, basically. So that is all good. The way it's secured, it looks like this is I think this is just like twine. It's probably easier ways to do it. Not necessarily that it looks any better or worse, but a lot of times with these grommets in the banners, you can just get like a small pack of bungees, and that'll save you a lot of time setting up in the morning. So if you're just looking for like a little bit of a little bit of a time saver, going with bungees might be a lot quicker for you. So just think about that. And especially if you're by yourself too, I think it's easier to hook up a bungee and just kind of have it stretched and then attach it to the other end, as opposed to trying to, tie knots and make sure everything is nice and tight when you're by yourself. Okay, so I'm going to kind of pause for a moment and bring up one of the questions that Eliana asked me. And that is basically, when you are a small business, how do you market your business and do it in a remote area when opportunities are limited? Okay, so clearly we can see that she's in Alaska. And first of all, the craft fair season in Alaska is probably pretty darn short. So a lot of these outdoor events probably move inside. And then once you're inside, there's probably very few options to work with, okay? So this is a really good question. I like this question a lot because there's people all over the country and frankly all over the world who maybe they don't live in next to a big metropolis where there's endless supply of craft fairs. So when you're in this situation and you're trying to grow your small business, what you're going to have to do is really lean on your online presence. And you've done a good job of, putting your best foot forward at your in-person events to try to get people to notice you online. So you basically have all of your bases here covered. And we noticed right off the bat that there was 1 and 2 different areas that have the business cards. Okay, so it's always good to have at least 2 spots at your booth where you have business cards, because I know that I've said this before, but I'll say it again. And if there's a couple of people standing at this table and it's kind of blocking this business card and somebody else is in a different spot of the booth and they're interested, give them another option to get a business card. Okay. So don't leave it to just one and hope that the right person sees it. So give them a couple options. Another thing that you're doing really well to try to expand your marketing, especially online, is your mailing list. So not a lot of vendors are doing this these days. I don't know if they consider it too old school or what, but I would actually be hitting this as hard as possible. Every vendor. An email list is so important. So important because if you have 300 people in your email list and you send out an email, all 300 people are going to receive it. If you have 300 Facebook followers and you make a post, 300 people are not going to see that post. You can go into your analytics and view the reach of your posts on social media sites, and it is a fraction of the amount of your followers that you have. Okay. So it's very important to have an email contact list going so that you have that reliable avenue of communication with the people who are interested in your business. Okay, now let's talk about some other things. So I noticed that you have a .com website, and one of the things that you can do, and I'm kind of just speaking in general terms to anybody with a small business, okay? So if you have a .com website, one of the things that you should be doing on there is if you make something yourself. So in this particular instance, Eliana has her own line of cosmetics, okay? Put some kind of video, like make some kind of video and put it on your website, put it on your social media sites of you making your items. It's very, very important to do this. Sometimes we're so excited to get to like the final product and the final result that you just skip the process of actually crafting your item. And this is what makes it so special to shoppers. Shoppers get excited at craft fairs because they actually get to meet the artists that make the item. So that's like a deep connection to the item and a link to you as an artist from the shopper. Okay. So don't forget about this, make videos of you crafting your items and whatnot. And don't worry about, I'm kind of worried that somebody's going to steal my ideas or steal my methods. Let them, whatever. Trust yourself. Trust that you are the one that has formulated this brand and these items. And just trust in yourself and your following and do your thing. So don't be worried about other people, possibly learning from your videos. Do it for the benefit of the shopper, okay? Because I think that's going to far outweigh any kind of negatives that come along with posting your in-progress videos. Now, just a couple of general social media tips. I would recommend that you post consistently so that people kind of get familiar with you and they can count on that reliability and that just steady stream of posts from you. And if I had to pick as far as social media sites, which ones to jump on, I'm not going to say like which ones you should go for because everybody has different success on, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, but I would really heavily lean into one or two of them and then maybe use the third one as like a tester to see like what grabs people's attention, or you can kind of just keep it off to the side if you want, but I would really, really try to be consistent with at least one. And then that way, again, you're establishing that consistency with your followers and they can expect your posts and updates. And then finally, on your business cards at your events, be absolutely sure that you have a QR code on your business card. Businesses that are in remote areas and they kind of lean on online activity, whether it's from their own website or maybe if they have like an Etsy page, it's really, really important to have a QR code on your business card these days because that's how people are going to be able to just get onto those sites as quickly as possible. So these are some basic tips to really lean into the online presence when you're in an area that is difficult in person. Okay. So that's what you're going to have to do. You're really, really going to have to lean into the online presence more so than people who have the benefit of being in a big city and they have all these options year round for craft fairs. All right, so now let's talk about vertical space at the booth. I would say that it's solid. It's kind of somewhere in the middle, all right? So really, when we're talking about vertical space at the booth, we can take the banner into account. Okay, so that draws the eyes up, and it is making use of the higher part of the back of the booth. Okay, so that there is value to that. Of course, that's a lot of real estate visually when you're looking at the booth head on. Okay, so good job with your banner and nice design on it. Then as our eyes come down, we see basically two tabletop setups, and that is predominantly the extent of the vertical space, and not bad. Like I said, it's not a disaster by any means. So I do really like the displays, and I think, and again, we're going to touch on this in a bit, but I think it's more so the positioning of the tables that could get a little bit better. Okay, so just the positioning of everything could be a little bit better. But yeah, as far as verticality, I don't really have a whole lot to touch on. I do really, really like the fact that you have brought the logo and then your business name, as well as manufactured in Alaska, onto the front of the booth as well. So this is nice and eye-catching. I think if this table was turned inwards, it still would be a nice feature because people would be able to see it as they're walking by from this direction. And then over here, you can see that this tablecloth has the same exact thing. Okay, so you basically be covering it from both directions. So that's all I really want to touch on for vertical space. I think you're doing pretty solid. I mean, there's for this type of product, these are like small handheld products. They are best set up on a tabletop. Okay, so you do have the one stand here for the samples, and I think this is a nice stand for the samples. So again, not a whole lot to touch on. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive right into colors, contrast, and texture. So colors at the booth are fantastic. The mint green is just like a really clean, and this booth is like natural cosmetics, right? So it's kind of like a health and beauty booth, and I think this color can resonate with that. And it's just got this nice fresh crispness to it that reflects the brand well. So I do like that. There's no issues at all with texture at the booth. So we see solid colors everywhere, whether it's the displays or the tablecloths or these stands. Everything is basically a solid color. So I really, really enjoy that. There's basically no distractions at the booth. And then contrast. There's a couple of really nice points of contrast I'd like to kind of just point out for a second. And the first one is especially this setup right here with the darker wood and the white, I don't know what to call it, the white jars, right? So this is really, really nice contrast here. I dig this a lot. This is probably a highlight for me at the booth. And then we also have this backing area that matches the front. Pretty good contrast. It's there's really nothing blending into the display, and that's really what you're looking for when it comes to displaying your items. It's that you just want to avoid your items being the same color as your displays, okay? Because the point is that you want them to stand out. So in order to do that, they have to be different colors. So all around, when you look at the booth, there's absolutely no issues with any of that. So yeah, I would say good job with colors, contrast, and texture. Okay, and then now we have the strength of the theme. This is definitely one of the highlights of the booth. The theme is super well defined. I like that you've made it a point to put in multiple locations cosmetics made in Alaska. So hammering home, again, that handmade quality of the booth, all right? So yeah, when we take a look at the way that you've put your language out there on your banner, the way that you're displaying your items, and again, those crisp and clean colors, the bottles themselves and the jars themselves, I think it's really high quality. I really like the way that everything looks. You have a really, really nice label on the front here, and you can see it has the snowflake logo on each one, and there's a little bit of information on each one, okay? So again, I think your branding in itself is very, very good when it comes to the logo and the colors, okay? Now, one thing I want to talk about with your branding, while we're kind of talking about strength of theme here, is that I did have a little bit of a concern with the multiple names. Okay, so on the banner it says Eira Cosmetics, and then your website is eirabeauty.com, and then your email is your name at eirabeauty.com, and then your social media handles is Eira from Alaska. Okay, so we have a lot of different combinations of your business name, and it would be hard to recall which one is actually the business name. So like if you just glanced at the banner for like 3 or 4 seconds and you saw all this information and you're turned away, I think that a lot of people would be like, was it Eira Beauty, or was it Eira from Alaska, or was it Eira Cosmetics? So if at all possible, and I know that it's a lot more difficult once you've kind of established yourself, but I would try to shift as much of this as possible to one name, okay? And preferably, I mean, to me, the business name is Eira Cosmetics, okay? So I would try to shift as much of that as possible to match this. And is the domain still available? So I would check for the domain. And if it's not, can you do something that is close to Eira Cosmetics? So, and then, your email is your actual name and then at eirabeauty.com. So could you just put info at eirabeauty.com? And then that way it's a lot more easier to remember, and also for people to remember and spell out. So you have to take that in consideration that, people aren't going to be familiar with your name, right? So make it as easy as possible and strip it down as much as you can so that people have an easy time or easier time of remembering how to find you and how to send you an email and all that stuff. Same thing with your social media handles. These might be the easiest to try to shift over to Eira Cosmetics if you can. A lot of times these are basically just, entering in and seeing if it's available. So this is one of the tricky things, okay, Eliana? So this is one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with at the booth, is that you've kind of put yourself in a tricky position where there's a lot of names, okay? And like I said, just do what you can. See if you can get any of it moved over to one, and at least where most of it is covered under one name. Okay, so I think that we've covered strength of theme pretty well. I mean, like I said, obviously the theme is fantastic. It's very well carved out, and we know what is going to be at this booth. So let's dive into accessibility, and this is going to be one of the big opportunities for improvement. Now, I want to make note for the viewers that I did see a recent photo of Eliana's booth, and she went with the Z formation, okay? And if you aren't familiar with the Z formation, basically it's to have, say this table right here, the 6-foot table, you would slide it to the back of the booth, kind of in the center, maybe a little bit left to center from our view. And then you would take another table and you would have it scooted over a little bit and have it coming down close to the center of the booth. And then finally, you would introduce possibly a third table, and it would be on the front right, okay? So that is the Z pattern. It basically just looks, like this. And the vendor would be in this back area here where there's like a little nook that would be carved out for the vendor. And then that opens up a whole lane basically over here for the shoppers to come through. Maybe like something like this, maybe about like that. And so they have like a pretty big area to kind of come through, and they can check out all 3 of those tables. So I think that she has switched to that since this picture, okay? So I would definitely recommend that over what you have here, because that's going to be far more accessible than this setup here, because like I said, this is very, very bottlenecked for people to get in and out of here. And there's kind of a lot of wasted space like in this back corner here. Okay, so I do understand the appeal and the desire to put a table out front, because it's like, okay, you push it out front, it's close to the aisle, people are going to see that very easily. So I do understand that. However, I think you can get a pretty similar effect if you went with 2 tables the long way and had them both all the way up in this front corner. So basically, if you were to take this table and drag it all the way forward to this corner, and then just turn this one and make sure that it's all the way to the corner of the canopy. The reason why is that I think you'd still get the same effect of people being able to see the items right away, just walking through the aisle. And then that would give them a really, really large space to walk into, very, very easily accessible. So the way that you have it right now, I would strongly, strongly advise avoiding this particular setup because it's such a tight squeeze, and there's actually a lot of like tripping hazards where people can catch their foot or they can, bump into something. Like this could easily get bumped into right here, and it's smack dab right in the middle of the entrance of the booth. So you've got this set up right here. If you turn the table, you could still have it where maybe you have actually this over here, and that is drawing people in, or you could have it on the far side of the table. So either way, but having it out front and then having the table, that actually might draw people in to see the samples right off the bat. This TV tray, we talked about the TV tray a little bit earlier. This I would just ditch entirely, okay? Because this is basically, it's not benefiting you a whole lot, and I think it's causing far more harm than good at the booth. It's eating up a lot of walking space, and it is one of those things where if people aren't paying attention, they could bump into it and knock stuff over, or just catch their foot on it and either knock it over or they go down, which is obviously the least ideal of scenarios. So, yeah, I think just with accessibility, that is kind of the main concerns. Now, I do want to point out the accessibility factors that you're doing well, and that is the general tidiness of the booth. If you look, you don't see any kind of totes, you don't see any water bottles or lunches or anything like that. So it is very, very neat and clean, and that's a very important aspect of accessibility. Okay, people want to feel like they're being invited into the booth and that there's an environment that's tidy enough to do so. So very good job with that. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to general use of space. So we did touch on a lot of this already, and as you start to bring out more products, you definitely do have room to put more into the booth depending on how you configure it, okay? So things like this TV tray, by getting rid of that, I think you're actually going to buy yourself some more space, because if you think about it, look at this tabletop display. It's not that big. So if you were able to get this on a tabletop somewhere, now you've basically opened up this much room of walking around in your booth, or possibly for some kind of like a floor stand, something like this, but even bigger. So it's going to open up some options for you. Same thing with this here, this stool. This is probably, I don't know, I can't decide if this is here for you to lean against during the event. And it would kind of make sense because you have that sign right here that introduces yourself. So it's like you're kind of introducing yourself on the sign, and then you're also like present right here. So that would make sense. But it also has a lot of stuff on it, right? So that part of me feels like you aren't using it as a place to be as the vendor. So there's just a lot of like configuration decisions that I think you have to think about from the shopper's point of view. Make it inviting for them and make it a place where there's plenty of room to come in. Okay, so it's kind of like a little bit of a balance. Like, yes, you want to get a lot of product out there and you want to display stuff in some different ways so that it's not just monotonous and repeating all over the booth. So you want to leave room for that, of course, but I think even more importantly, you want to just have room for people to get in and around the booth. Okay, I think that's even more important than kind of stuffing the booth. All right. Okay, so let's move on to the eye test. And the eye test is basically 2 or 3 seconds that a shopper is walking by, and what are you doing to get them to stop at your booth? Overall, I would say the eye test is very, very good. This mostly is because of the strength of your theme, which is really, really well defined, okay? We know that it's a cosmetics booth. We know that it's like a health and beauty booth. So this is really important when it comes to the eye test and you're passing with flying colors. So that aspect of your booth is probably your biggest strength, along with colors, contrast, and texture. Okay, so that is very, very well done at the booth. I wouldn't change a whole lot, to be honest with you. It's mainly just the configuration, how to get it to where you like it. Maybe you like that Z pattern that we were talking about before, and maybe it's as simple as that. So maybe you've kind of found your layout that you like, and now you can go ahead and stick with it and have those people walking into the booth, because it is an eye-catching booth for sure. When you look at the booth next door, it looks like very dark. You can kind of see there's like a lot of dark colors going on, and this is very bright and inviting. So yeah, overall, you're doing a really, really good job. Now, one thing I would like to kind of point out with the eye test is that I do think that you would benefit from having a back wall put down on your canopy. I believe you mentioned this in your email to me that you prefer not to. I know that you for sure prefer not to have the sides closed off. Okay, so that's not too big of a deal because most of the time we're looking at booths head on. So we're kind of looking at it from the view that we're looking at now, and the sides aren't as disruptive, okay? But this back area, like, man, there's a lot going on behind here. And if you had just one solid color, I don't care if it's a white panel, a green panel, even just whatever solid color you'd have back there, it would just cut out so much distraction. It would make your banner pop a little bit better because there's just a solid color all around it. And then even these items right here on the table, it would just have a nice solid backdrop behind it. Okay, so just consider it. I know that you said you kind of like to lean and steer away from the side walls, and I'm not sure if that applied to the back wall as well, but I really, really think it would help. So just something to think about. So this was episode number 19. Wow, number 19 already in the booth review series. Eliana, I gotta say that you are probably the biggest contributor on the channel, quite easily. So if you're familiar with the channel and you've watched the videos before and checked out the comments or joined in during a premiere, you've probably seen Eliana in the live chat and in the comments section. So I really, really appreciate how involved you are in the channel, and a lot of people benefit from your contributions. Okay, so it's not just me saying, hey, thanks, it's helping the channel, it's great. It's really about how you're putting stuff out there for other vendors to learn and collaborate from. And you're one of the vendors also when other booth reviews are showing and I say, hey, follow this vendor, give them a follow or like on social media. You do it. Like, you follow these people and you are very, very supportive, not only of the channel, but everybody basically involved in the channel. So now the viewers, I invite you to follow Eliana on social media. Okay, so all of her links are displayed and they're also linked in the description of the video. Please give her a follow on social media. Check out her website. Get something for somebody as a gift. Okay, this is all handmade stuff from somebody with a cosmetic chemistry degree. Okay, so a lot of hard work and time has been put into this. So again, really hope you enjoyed the review. Hope the tips helped. She did give me a couple of extra questions, and she is a member of this channel. Okay, so once a month, I'm going to be releasing a video with member Q&As where members submit me questions about whatever, anything craft fair related, and I'm going to take the time to make a video based on their questions. So if you want in on that, check out the join button underneath this video to become a member of the channel. Tons of great perks. If you want to get your booth reviewed, that is also a perk of being a member of the channel. So again, be sure to check that out. If you want to check out all the other booth reviews, click on the playlist above, and thank you all again so much for watching.